Welcome to my beginning watercolor tip 5 video, the Big Brush Challenge. As you look at this picture, you'll see a variety of brushes from small to large, round and flat. What types of brushes do you use most often? Do you use both round and flat? Do you tend to favor smaller brushes, or do you experiment and use some of the larger brushes on the left? I think when choosing a brush, there's a tendency to undersize what we use for a particular task because we feel more comfortable with it. I think it seems more natural for people, if they're going to paint, say, the side of a building, to take a smaller brush and gradually fill the shape that they're going to paint, instead of taking a larger brush and just filling the space in one or two brush strokes. A watercolor looks fresher when you can make a brush stroke and leave it and not go back in and just keep meddling with it. So that's easier to accomplish when you're using a larger brush. You can make a brush stroke and make a statement with that brush stroke. And it's hard to do that when you're just filling a space little by little with little brush strokes in a small brush. When painting with a larger brush, you can paint a shape and leave it with one or two strokes. You can't do that with a small brush. So while I've called this video the Big Brush Challenge, I could have called it the Bigger Brush Challenge. I'm not suggesting that you do all your paintings with an 1.5" brush, but look at what you would normally use and challenge yourself to go up a notch and use a brush that's a bit bigger than what you would normally use. To demonstrate this concept, I'm going to do 3 value studies using a small brush. A second one will be using a large brush. And then the third one will be using a combination of a larger and a small brush. So here I have a sketch of a building, and I'm coming in with a smaller brush, and I'm starting to apply a wash. So I just have a light tone value wash here, and I'm painting a negative space, and I'm painting around the object. And this will take a little while because it is a small brush, doesn't cover a lot of area, and we just have to work little by little, fill in the space. Here I've made my way around the building structure with a wash, and now I'm starting to work on some of the shadow areas of this building. And I'm continuing again with this same brush. That's what I'm painting this this value study with. It's taken a little bit to get around this because it's a smaller brush and it takes a while. You have to do several strokes on any given shape to fill in the area that you're trying to put the wash on. I put a light wash on, and now I'm coming back with a darker value tone with the same brush, and I'm just putting in some more detail. Here I'm putting the final washes on. I've edited out a lot of this because it takes a while to get through this, but just wrapping it up here with a small brush, and from here we're going to move on to a larger brush. So this is my second value study. It's the same sketch, and we're going to do this with the 1.5" wash brush that was in my photo at the start. It was the one at the far left, and it was the largest brush that I had in the picture. I'm not suggesting that you do all your painting with an 1.5" brush. I'm just using this with a bit of exaggeration to show what's possible. And you can see by using this brush how much ground I cover very quickly. And I just make a brush stroke and I leave it. I move on. And I can make a statement but with this brush when I put a stroke down. So I have my negative painting around the outside of the building complete already, and I'm just going to get some more paint, and I'm going to come in and start painting on the building with the same brush. So I'm going to do this study here, the second study, using this 1.5" wash brush. And you can see that I'm not just using one area of the brush. I'm using the flat edge at the bottom of it. I'm using the corners. I'm using the side of the brush. You have to be creative, but you can really lay down some expressive brush strokes using a larger brush. And you'll notice how much area I've covered already, and I'll get the shadowed area of this building covered pretty quickly using this 1.5" brush. At the beginning of this video I mentioned that this is, I call this the big brush challenge, but it could be called the bigger brush challenge. So what size brush would you normally use for an exercise like this? If you were doing a similar value study, what size would you use? Probably not this 1.5" brush. Would it be very small? Would it be somewhere in the middle? Whatever it is, think about what size you can move up to make it more interesting and fresher and challenge yourself. Don't make it so big that all you're doing is fighting the brush, but do make it so it's a little bit out of your comfort zone, but it's still manageable, and then it's something that you can work to get comfortable with. But experiment and see what kind of results you get with it. Here I'm coming back as I did in the first value study, and I'm putting in some darker values. Now you can see how I can use the edge of this brush at different angles and make different marks and control it differently depending on what part of the brush I'm using. So I'm putting the final touches on here with this large brush, and as I said, this probably isn't how you would paint this, but you could if you wanted, and I just use this to exaggerate a little bit and just show you what's possible. Now here I am at the third example, and I'm going to start with a larger brush than I did in the first one, but smaller than I did in the second. I've got about a 1/2 inch flat brush here. It's not a huge brush, but it's bigger than a small round that a lot of people use. And you can see I can cover a lot of area here with a few strokes, but it's a little bit more precise than using an 1.5" wash brush. I have my light wash on, and now I'm coming in with a middle value using the same brush, and you can see just using the edge and the corners and the side, you can get different effects and get create different types of marks when you make a brush stroke. You'll also notice that I'm using a flat brush, which works well on buildings and the sides of buildings. It's not that you couldn't use a round brush, but a medium-sized flat brush works very well for this type of a painting or study. I've applied light and middle value washes with my 1/2 inch flat brush, and now I'm coming in with a darker value and doing some detail work, and here I'm coming with a fine point brush. So this is where I'm using a combination of brushes to give me the results I'm after. So I'm not painting this all with one brush, and you normally don't when you're doing a painting, but I'm trying to use a variety of sizes. I've tried to illustrate in this video what's possible using a variety of brushes. The point of this beginning watercolor tip is to get you to challenge yourself, take yourself out of your comfort zone, and try painting with some brushes that are larger than what you would normally paint with. I'm not saying to use an 1.5" flat brush, but challenge yourself to paint with a brush that's a little bit out of your comfort zone, larger than what you would normally paint with. And you're going to find as you start working with larger brushes, your paintings are going to be fresher, you're going to be more expressive with your brush strokes, and you're going to enjoy it a lot more. So give it a try. I hope you enjoyed this. Challenge yourself, and thanks for watching.